Morning, friends. Today I want to talk about riding with kids because I've got kids and I know a lot of y'all have kids, and cycling is the kind of thing that you want to share with the people that you love.
Yeah, sunny days, no clouds in the sky, about to get away. Feels like it's been a freaking decade. Sorry, don't call me cause I'm gonna be on break. Sunny day, make way. All the stress and doubt, yeah, not today. Feels like it's been a freaking decade. Sorry, don't call me cause I'm gonna be on break.
Now, some kids really take to the bike and it's kind of their thing, and that's awesome. My kids are not really that way. Anytime we're going out, it is a little more of work as a parent. So if you're like me and your kids are reluctant cyclists, I wanted to give y'all what I do to help make the rides and the time more enjoyable. A couple things though before we get into those tips that I think are important for parents to think about is why? Why are we getting our kids into bikes? What's interesting about bikes is that bikes are more than just a hobby. I was lucky enough to kind of have it drilled into my head when I was younger that bikes are not just a toy. They're not just a sport. They're not just something that you do for fun. Bikes are actually a tool. So when I talk to my kids about why we're riding bikes, yes, I want them to enjoy it and I want them to have fun, but I also want them to know that you don't have to think about bikes as a sport. You also don't have to think about bikes as a hobby. You can think about bikes as a way to get around, as a tool. And truly, in this day and age, with climate change and all of that, bikes have never been a more viable form of transportation. And so, for me, that is a big part of why it feels so important to get my kids riding and feeling comfortable on the roads, in the bike paths, the bike lanes, the sidewalks, wherever it is they need to be. So, with all that said, here are my 5 tips for encouraging reluctant young cyclists. Tip number 1 is the bike. So, you want to make sure that your kids have a bike that is well maintained and that fits them properly. Nobody wants to ride a bike that's too big or too small. And if there's always something wrong with the bike, nobody's going to want to get out and ride. Not even you. Buying decent bikes from a reputable bike shop is a great way to make sure that you're making a real investment on something that will last and will work for a long time for your child, or if they grow out of it, that you can resell it. Think about that when fitting out your child with a bike. The next thing to think about when getting your kids out on bikes is the routes that you take. If you're trying to teach your children that bikes are a mode of transportation and not just a toy, riding to places is one of the best ways to do that. So riding to a place that they know and like gets them riding towards something that they enjoy. Now, when you route these things, it's important to remember that newer riders are often a lot more reluctant to ride on the road because it's scarier, especially when you're a little tiny kid and you have so much less visibility. Because let's get real, cars are scary, even as adults riding. So being really mindful to find what we would call high comfort roads to wherever it is that you're going, looking for places with very little traffic, very wide lanes. Protected bike lanes are awesome. And then if necessary, hopping on sidewalks or walking paths to help your kiddos feel safe. And along with routing comes pacing. It's important to remember that the kids are going to move a lot more slowly. And that's okay. They don't need to be racing it, but just make sure you plan accordingly. Tip number 3 is incentivize. The age-old parenting technique of bribery. If your kids are reluctant cyclists, Find things that will get them interested in it. So this can be tying it into other interests they have, or just straight up buying them bubble tea like we did yesterday. We all know bribery is not a great long-term solution, but it can be a great way to get your kids excited about riding and building their confidence before you start asking them to do more. Tip 4 is start small and slowly build your way up. Now, our girls did 13 miles yesterday on their bikes, but they didn't start out doing rides that big. We started with much shorter rides, much closer to home, spent time kind of bopping around the neighborhood and finding friends' houses that we could ride to. Kids rarely have the endurance and the stamina to do big rides when they start out, unless they really, really like it. If your young cyclist is as reluctant as mine, then starting off with big rides is only going to lead to disappointment. Now for the final and maybe most important tip of all, lower your expectations. Riding with kids, especially going places, it can be challenging, it can be hard, there can be fussing and crying and crashes and all of that. So the more expectation you put on these rides, the harder it's going to be for your kids to enjoy it. By lowering your expectations and maybe even expecting the worst, you're going to have a much better time, and your kids are going to feel a lot less pressure to perform, and therefore also enjoy the ride a lot more. All right, friends, there you have it. My 5 tips for getting kids out on bikes, even if it's not their favorite thing to do. I'd love to know what you thought. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what's worked well for you and your kids. I'd love to hear it. It's been a really fun process getting the girls out. Our oldest doesn't really want to go on rides, so to speak, but she's always really happy to hop on her bike to go to her friend's house, and I count that as a win. Our youngest definitely enjoys it more and has even been out on a gravel ride with me, which was tons of fun. Truly, my goal with getting the girls out on bikes is to help foster a relationship with the bike that really serves whatever needs they have. So maybe it's a form of transportation, maybe it's a fun hobby, maybe it's a sport, maybe it's their tool for revolution. I don't know. But I want them to feel comfortable and confident on a bike so that however they want to use it as they get older, it's available for them. So, again, I'd love to hear what's worked for you, how you've been able to share cycling with your kiddos, and if there's anything else that you want to know about or if you have questions, be sure to drop them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.